Hello, and welcome back to Pathfinder. My name is Philip, and I'm here to talk about Pathfinder 2nd Edition. This is part of a series I am producing covering the various deities in the Pathfinder role-playing game and its setting, the world of Golarion. Last time, I covered Abadar, god of cities, trade, law, and wealth. This time, I am covering Calistria, elven goddess of lust, trickery, and revenge. Calistria is the most famous deity of the Elven Pantheon, a group of gods the elves brought with them from their home planet of Castrovel. She is ancient, conniving, and powerful, and is often associated with those traits which other ancestries find most alluring among elves: freedom, sensuality, and cleverness. Whether these traits are actually representative of all elves on Golarion is highly questionable, and these perceived traits can often lead to unflattering stereotypes for elves when dealing with other ancestries. Calistria is known by several names, including the Savored Sting, the Lady in the Room, and the Unquenchable Fire. She is well recognized for her fickle nature, drifting from interest to interest on a whim, never lingering on one topic or individual for longer than they can hold her interest. The exception to this is her devotion to vengeance, which she pursues relentlessly and without fail. In this area, she is impossibly persistent, biding her time so she can strike her foes when they are most vulnerable. Outside of her dedicated clergy, she is worshipped primarily by elves, hedonists, scorned lovers, performers, and thieves, though sex workers hold her in high regard as well. Calistria is almost universally depicted as an elven woman of intoxicating beauty. She is said to be a manifestation of raw sexual magnetism, capable of attracting men and women of any ancestry regardless of their sexual preferences. She is generally thought to have blonde hair, and is commonly depicted in revealing black and yellow garments, meant to bewitch those who behold her. Though she identifies as a woman, she has been known to manifest in a male form from time to time, though this form's beauty is no less stunning and captivating. The Savored Sting makes her home in Elysium, in her deific realm of Golarion, and specifically within her personal domain, the Gardens of Deceit and Delight. This realm is a shifting and treacherous maze of hedges, roses, and forests, dotted with palatial manors which serve as Calistria's pleasure houses. Though Elysium as a whole is a realm of relative positivity and safety, the Gardens of Deceit and Delight can be quite dangerous for those who enter unprepared. Devout followers of Calistria, called Calistrians, are called to live lives devoted to personal freedom above all other things. They are not to be tied down with stifling relationships, and should instead pursue a life of varied joys, moving from experience to experience and never becoming tied down or stagnant. Due to these capricious teachings, lifelong followers of Calistria are relatively rare, especially considering her prominence. Particularly rare are those who follow her to the exclusion of all other deities for their entire career. Most mortals who worship the Lady in the Room come to her when they have pursuits which touch on one or more of her three aspects: when they lust after someone, when they need to pull off substantial tricks or deceptions, or when they seek revenge on those who have wronged them. Once their goals are accomplished, many followers move back to other deities. Calistria takes no issue with this relationship, since she only takes interest in followers who are actively pursuing goals related to her three aspects. Temples and churches to Calistria are rarely purpose-built structures, and are more often mansions or large residences converted to her worship. They generally contain many small interior rooms, which can be locked for privacy, all the better to share secrets, to plan retribution, or to succumb to carnal desire. Temples are often guarded by swarms of wasps, Calistria's favorite animal, and wasp nests are specifically cultivated by priests on temple grounds. Multiple temples might exist within a single city, each corresponding to different interpretations of Calistria's faith. Some will be benevolent, others malevolent, and still others decidedly neutral. Most will serve as salons, in the classical definition of the word, places where the faithful can gather in privacy and comfort to discuss various matters of their faith. It is a common misconception that the priests and priestesses of these temples are all sex workers. While many clergy members might engage in these practices throughout the Inner Sea region, it is not a universal practice. Some temples will engage with this conduct readily, especially in parts of the world where such work is common practice. Other temples might avoid this conduct entirely, choosing to focus more on the trickery and vengeance aspects of the faith. Regardless, most Calistrians are particularly sympathetic to sex workers and will readily protect and avenge them when necessary. As a side note, I've noticed that the vast majority of the discussion of sex and sex work as a pillar of Calistrian faith is found in older 1st edition material. Paizo has published substantially less carnal content in 2nd edition, especially as it relates to religion. This might be a conscious choice on the part of the developers, choosing to move away from more explicit adult content. Or it might simply be a limitation on page count. 2e has much less material available, and exploring the minutiae of every religion has definitely not yet been a priority. Regardless, this brings up an important point. You and your group decide what topics are and are not allowed at your table. If you want to include discussions of sex and sex work, that is fine. Conversely, if you want these topics specifically excluded, that's fine too. Communicate with your table mates and figure out where everyone is comfortable. And those limits will change from group to group. For example, I play a duet campaign with my wife, and our content limits are much more inclusive than the limits I have with my normal gaming group. Remember, healthy communication is as important to the game as a set of dice. Anyway, back to the main topic. Calistria's holy text is the Book of Joy, a book which details the various passions in which followers might engage: carnal pleasures, mischievous tricks, and vengeful pursuits. Another text, called Blood for Wine, contains multiple holy poems sacred to the faith. The faith of Calistria first appeared among elves, though her existence certainly predates the arrival of the elves on Golarion. As a member of the Elven Pantheon, Calistria's faith likely first developed on Castrovel, the Venus to Golarion's Earth. It then migrated to Golarion with the Elves during the Age of Serpents. Interactions between elves and the other sentient races, namely humans, facilitated the spread of Calistria's faith. Today, the faith is common in Absalom, Galt, Kyonin, Nex, the River Kingdoms, the Shackles, Taldor, and Varissia. And among elves, half-elves, other mixed ancestry individuals, and humans of Taldan, Tian, Kelishite, and Varissian ethnicity. On the cosmic scale, Calistria generally keeps to her own schemes and interests. She rarely inserts herself into the conflicts of her fellow deities. That said, she has involved herself in the affairs of her fellows on a few noteworthy occasions. In an age before recorded history, legends claim that 3 unnamed deities transgressed against Calistria, then died before she could take her vengeance upon them. Their deaths did not free them, however, and the 3 gods remain unable to rest in peace. Calistria's unclaimed vengeance hangs over their heads to this day, and each year they return to her from whatever afterlife they've found, begging her to finally take their vengeance and allow them to rest. The Savored Sting has only ever responded with a silent smile, content to allow her victims to wait in unending, expectant agony. Calistria played a key role in the battle against Rovagug at the end of the Age of Creation. While the other deities prepared their trap on Golarion, Calistria alone distracted the rough beast and kept his attention away from the Dead Vault. How exactly she accomplished this is never specified, though her mastery over the arts of deception, illusion, and trickery is said to be unrivaled for a reason. Sometime later, Calistria put her guile and silver tongue to use once again, this time in the aid of a friend. In the year 4155 AR, Desna struck out against the demon lord Eolar, Lady of the Hunt, in retribution for her desecration of the corpse of a Desnan priest. Desna succeeded in her vengeance, completely destroying Eolar and her entire domain. The hordes of the Outer Rifts rallied against Desna, however, and before long, the entirety of creation was on the brink of a cosmic war. 3 goddesses, Shelyn, Sarenrae, and Calistria, had suffered similar transgressions at Eolar's hands, and chose to come to Desna's aid. Calistria put her particular skills to work, infiltrating the forces of the Outer Rifts and sowing mistrust and confusion among the demon lords. Before long, the entire army, once called the Coalition of Chaos, had turned against itself, and the demon lords of the Rifts were tearing at each other's throats once again. From these stories, it's easy to understand Calistria's nature as a vengeful trickster and a master manipulator. The reputation is well earned, and the Savored Sting herself does little to deny it. In fact, she encourages this view of herself, seeing it as an honest and true representation of what she stands for. Still, she does maintain a few notable alliances and friendly relationships, despite her penchant for manipulation. She has a rumored carnal relationship with Cayden Cailean, the heroic god of drunkenness, though the extent of this relationship is up for debate among Calistrians. Some say that the lucky drunk pines eternally for Calistria, but she leads him on, enjoying the chase and the longing in his eyes. Others claim that the two have succumbed to mutual desire, and that Cayden Cailean makes frequent visits to the gardens of deceit and delight. Some rumors suggest that Cayden's very ascension to godhood was a last desperate act to win Calistria's affections, after she declared that no mere mortal could survive her affections. Regardless of the veracity of these rumors, the Savored Sting and the Lucky Drunk maintain a more or less cordial relationship, and their followers are known to cooperate well. She maintains a friendship with Desna, with each goddess respecting the other's devotion to freedom. Desna maintains a vengeful streak against those who have wronged her, and Calistria appreciates this. Likewise, Desna can relate to Calistria's desire to move from one interest to the next on a whim. Calistria also gets along well with Shelyn, who reciprocates her affections. While each goddess has substantial points of disagreement with the other, notably on questions of vengeance versus forgiveness, each also sees the importance and potential in the other's areas of concern. Shelyn recognizes that carnal desire can, and often does, lead to true romantic affections, and that physical intimacy is an important pillar of many romantic relationships. For her part, Calistria recognizes the importance of beauty, and to a lesser extent art, to her domain of lust and seduction. Some tales say that Calistria lusts after Shelyn, but sources for this claim are relatively few and far between. Calistria also has a loose alliance with Norgorber, the god of secrets, murder, and thievery. These two deities share a passion for secrecy, manipulation, and deception, though Norgorber generally puts these interests toward malicious purposes more frequently. Calistrian and Norgorberite churches might be found to exchange information from time to time, and some Calistrian priests are known to derive poisons from the stingers of wasps, which they might then sell to Norgorberites. Calistria's only known lasting enemy is Rovagug, who is the enemy of almost all deities anyway. She does, however, have a long-standing rivalry with, say it with me, Urgathoa. This is more of a rivalry than a true enmity, though, and is born out of competition. Both goddesses often vie for followers from a similar pool of potential devotees. Calistria holds domain over lust specifically, while Urgathoa demands that her followers engage in voracious consumption of all pleasures, including those of the flesh. The last set of relationships to note are those which Calistria maintains with her fellow members of the Elven Pantheon. Calistria is often misidentified by non-elves as the head of the Elven Pantheon, similar to the position Torag holds over the Dwarven Pantheon. The gods of the Elves, however, do not have a formal rigid hierarchy, and this misconception is largely due to humans stereotyping elves as lustful, vengeful, and mistrustful, then deciding that Calistria must be their most important deity. Calistria's most important aspect to many elves is instead her devotion to freedom, and she holds no authority over her fellow members of the Elven Pantheon. Relatively little is known about the Elven Pantheon as a whole, so I hope to approach them in more detail later after a potential book like Lost Omen's Kyonin is released. For players interested in playing an elf, here's a quick rundown. Alceta, the Welcomer, is the goddess of doorways and transitions, and is associated with the legendary elf gates, the Ayudara network. Cernunnos, the Stag Lord, is the god of fertility, luck, and seasons, and the son of Erastil. Findeladlara, the Guiding Hand, is the god of art and artistic preservation. Ketefis, the Hunter, is the elven god of hunting and forestry. Finally, Yulral, the Wise, is the elven goddess of crafting, magic, and gemstones. For players who might be interested in characters who follow Calistria, here are a few useful details. For those using the alignment rules, Calistria is a chaotic neutral deity, and will accept clerics of any chaotic alignment. Her edicts are to pursue personal freedom, seek hedonistic thrills, and to take vengeance. To be consumed by love or vengeance, or to allow slights to go unanswered, are anathema to Calistria. Her holy symbol is 3 daggers pointing outward from a circle, each dagger representing one of her 3 aspects: lust, trickery, and revenge. Her domains are pain, passion, secrecy, and trickery. Calistria's favored colors are black and yellow, and followers will generally incorporate these colors prominently into their clothing. Followers will tend toward soft, elegant fabrics, such as silk or lace, or toward evocative materials, like polished leather. Many, though not all, followers of Calistria will tend toward sensual or revealing cuts of clothing, from plunging necklines to high-cut skirt slits. Those followers unwilling to show their skin might garb themselves in form-fitting clothes intended to emphasize the beauty of their body. Still others might incorporate black and yellow stripe patterns into their outfits, evoking the imagery of the wasp. Many followers will accent their outfits with henna dyes on the arms and hands. Those followers who favor metal armor will often incorporate gold decor or gold plates into their suits. Additionally, followers will often incorporate erotic motifs into their gear. Calistria's favored weapon is the whip, because she is the goddess of lust and subtlety is for cowards. Really though, the whip is an excellent representation of her teachings. It must be wielded with exacting precision, but can be used to inflict incredible pain upon its victims. A skilled wielder can even inflict huge quantities of pain without killing her opponents. Other weapons which might be appropriate for a Calistrian might be the cat o' nine tails, the scourge, or the bladed scarf. Alternatively, followers might tend toward weapons with the concealable trait, such as the corset knife, the coat pistol, the stiletto pen, or the wrist launcher. As mentioned earlier, Calistria's favorite animal is the wasp, and many followers will use wasps and other venomous insects as familiars. More martially minded followers might take a giant wasp as an animal companion, and this is not unheard of among the clergy as well. Calistria's formal clergy consists largely of clerics and bards. They do not have a formal hierarchy, instead organizing themselves around those priests or priestesses who have the most social power. Though many of the most influential priests are spellcasters, followers with no magical talent can rise to power by demonstrating impressive social skills. For this reason, rogues with a focus on social skills, or outwit rangers, might rise to substantial heights within the church. Other classes or builds with a focus on charisma and social skills might be well suited to Calistrian worship, including the swashbuckler or a face-oriented thaumaturge. Spellcasters will tend to focus on subtlety, namely with illusion and mind control spells. In addition to clerics and bards, followers might be nymph bloodline sorcerers, or tangible dream or silent whisper psychics with charisma as their casting stat. Followers might also take feats from the dandy or captivator archetypes, improving their social skills. The schools of sin for lust or wrath, as explored in the New Magic of Thassalon supplement on Pathfinder Infinite, might provide excellent training for a wizard following Calistria. Similarly, the Scouring Lash Magus hybrid study from Magus Plus is appropriately thematic as well. Humans and elves make up the majority of Calistria's faithful. Among the elves, she is most widely worshipped by the Ayudine elves of Avestan and the Ekuje elves of the Mwangi Expanse. She is also worshipped widely by humans of Varisian, Taldan, and Kelishite descent. She is also worshipped widely in Tian Sha by elves and humans alike, though this will likely be detailed further in the upcoming Tian Sha books. Half-elves are also frequently drawn to the faith of Calistria, since their existence is so often due to lustful but short-lived relationships. Devout Calistrians will live lives of passion, lingering on one interest only as long as it remains interesting, then moving on without a second thought. They might seem fickle or cruel to those they leave behind, but few would make the mistake of considering them forgetful. Their memories are long when it comes to grievances, and they will never fail to seek revenge for a slight. Following the example of their patron goddess, Calistrians will seek to be clever, suave, subtle, and sultry as the situation demands, quickly learning to manipulate those around them to their own ends. Followers of Calistria might take up adventuring in an attempt to seek out someone who wronged them so they might take their revenge. Alternatively, if the target of their vengeance is in a position of power, then they might take up a life of adventuring to obtain the strength or wealth necessary to strike at their foe. They will rarely form lasting friendships with their fellow adventurers, or, if they do, they will not allow those relationships to hold them back from pursuing their goals. Calistrians will never bind themselves to another if they can avoid it, and marriage for a Calistrian is hardly a permanent or monogamous institution. They will likely engage in carnal pursuits freely, and with much enthusiasm, though they will be careful to keep themselves guarded and prevent themselves from falling in love. For those players looking for more character inspiration, or to homebrew some custom magic items for a follower of Calistria, check out her 1st edition page on Archives of Nethys. Her deific obedience and anti-paladin codes are dripping with flavor, though you might want to tone a few details down depending on what your table mates are comfortable with. The Calistrian Kiss and the Hateful Sting are very cool weapons and would be fun to port over to 2nd edition, and the Stinging Stiletto and Scarves of the Stinging Dancer would be very fun to bring in after a little tweaking for balance. For GMs seeking to integrate Calistria and her followers into a campaign, here are some ideas. Calistria's current herald is the Menatherian, a giant black wasp with shape-changing abilities. Her divine servitors are the Vendenopteryx, beautiful, seductive shapeshifters who use their male and female forms to punish enemies of the faith. When she chooses to interact with her followers, she communicates her favor by blessing her followers with success in carnal pursuits. Those who displease her will likely find themselves swarmed by wasps. Calistria is well suited for intrigue-themed campaigns. All 3 of her aspects thrive in social situations, especially where subtlety, manipulation, and secrecy are needed. Calistrian temples can serve as important centers of information for PCs. Good-aligned parties might have difficulty infiltrating thieves' guilds, but Calistrian temples will likely accept visitors of any alignment, potentially giving the PCs access to the criminal underworld. Conflict within the Calistrian Church might also serve as a fascinating and high-stakes backdrop for a city-based adventure. Temples of Calistria often have differences of opinion regarding doctrine. These differences, coupled with the Savored Sting's emphasis on the importance of vengeance, can lead to long-lasting and bloody feuds between temples. In cities which host 2 or more Calistrian temples, a feud between them might manifest as a secret war, with opera houses, salons, and galas serving as the battlefields. The PCs might be aligned with one church over the others, or they might simply be thrown into this viper den and forced to survive while pursuing unrelated goals of their own. Finally, I'd like to take some inspiration from one of my favorite novels, The Count of Monte Cristo. Spoiler alert for a book from 1844. The novel revolves around Edmond Dantes, a man falsely imprisoned by his rivals. He escapes from prison, makes his fortune, and spends the next decade planning his vengeance. He reappears in Paris under the title of The Count of Monte Cristo, and meticulously and mercilessly destroys his enemies. Edmond, the Count, is a model of Calistrian vengeance. He is patient, calculating, and vicious, unwavering in his devotion. And yet, at the end of the tale, once his revenge is complete, he moves on, finding joy in the life he has yet to live. In a Pathfinder campaign, the Count might appear as a friendly NPC, using the PCs as tools of his revenge. Alternatively, the Count might be an adversary. If the PCs take on the role of the Count's rivals, then an Edmund-like figure would make for a compelling and fascinating villain. Finally, an interesting campaign might involve putting the PCs in the role of Edmund Dantes, falsely imprisoned by their enemies. The campaign can revolve around the PCs freeing themselves, gathering power and resources, and plotting their vengeance. So that's it. That's Calistria, goddess of lust, trickery, and revenge. She is a divinity centered on mystery, freedom, and pleasure, and is notoriously difficult to predict. Next time, I'll be covering a god who is far more predictable and yet substantially more dangerous. Up next is the great destroyer himself, Rovagug, the god of destruction. If you enjoyed this video, consider checking out my rules supplement Expanded Ancestries on Pathfinder Infinite. It adds over 200 new ancestry feats to the game, spread among each of the ancestries not covered by the Pathfinder 2e remaster. And be sure to like and subscribe to see more videos like this.